Welcome to Globally Speaking, your program that explores everything and anything to do with language localization. Are you ready to dive into the most critical issues impacting global brands today? Globally Speaking is designed to educate, inform, and challenge everyone who's engaged in global communications. Your hosts for Globally Speaking are Renato Beninatto and Michael Stevens. Learn more by visiting our website at www.globallyspeakingradio.com. And now, here are Renato and Michael.
Hi, I'm Renato Beninatto.
And I'm Michael Stevens. Localization of life sciences is a hot topic, one that I haven't had a lot of exposure to, but hear about often. And in the last couple months, we've seen that companies in this space have been acquired at high premiums.
Well, that's true. We Localize bought Global Language Solutions in California, and RWS acquired Corporate Translations in 2016 and Luz now in 2017 for something like 11 times profit or 3 times revenue, which is unheard of in the language services space.
These are impressive numbers indeed.
Well, keeping that in mind, we recently sat down with Jeff Gerhardt for a very enlightening conversation about the challenges in localizing life science-related products like medical devices.
So Jeff Gerhardt, he was a director of global labeling at Edwards Life Sciences. They are a global leader in the science of heart valves and hemodynamic monitoring. I'm guessing that has something to do with blood there. And now he's the CEO of Syntex Life Technologies, a management consulting firm in this space.
Let's hear from him, right?
Sounds good.
I'm Jeff Gerhardt. I'm the founder and principal at Syntex Life Technologies. I've been working in the life science space for nearly 20 years now. I've had the fortune of having great experiences being responsible for IT overseas in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, all the way coming back to working with companies that are highly innovative and supporting them across their needs for quality, engineering, regulatory, IT, HR, all sorts of needs.
Mm-hmm. And you are in the life sciences space, and in this space, everything is regulated. So what are the implications of regulations in translation?
Well, it really makes for a minefield. From a regulatory perspective, there's no greater risk than mislabeling a product or misrepresenting a product. And translations are really where all the mines and the minefield are at, because it's so simple for a non-medical translator to do their best to try to take a very complex concept, phrase, or medical term and try to get that moved into that language, and in the localization process completely misrepresent that you're not talking about salad dressing, you're talking about a medical dressing. And those type of issues and phrases and such have to be comprehended, and it requires a specialty that you really rely on your translation partners to house, and not just body shop anybody that can take your source language to a local language, but really have a level of medical expertise and the linguistic expertise. And so I can tell you that the people that are in regulatory or marketing in a life science company, they're like a cat on a hot tin roof on these subjects, because when they pop up, they have the ability to call recalls, which can bring your business to a halt in a region or a country, or in an innovation-focused company, they can halt your launches and the time frame for those launches. So significant pressure to get it right, not only to get it right, but get it done fast. So technology, process, strong process are just real key to making sure that you're going to be able to not have a product have a false start or have a pullback in the field.
People love, and I hate to do this, but that's the reality. People love horror stories. Tell us one.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are dealing in both high fines and life and death. And are you aware of any that something has gone on there?
Hopefully with a competitor.
That's the thing, is that I couldn't share something too deep, but maybe I could mix a few stories together and say this story is based on facts that really happened, on true facts, right? but does not imply any of my clients or partners. There's all sorts of things where localization, for instance, I can tell you I'm familiar with cases where localization caused issues on labels, and in country there is Tipex or whiteout being used to correct labels, which is a regulatory person's nightmare because it creates issues. There are numerous stories where the information inside of instructions for use got all the way to the field and they told someone to put the product in the wrong body cavity.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you realize that humans are at the end of these things, and why it makes everyone so nervous. And anyone who's responsible for the content on a global scale is filled with pressure because speed is of issue, but quality can never ever be suffered, or you will suffer a much more dire consequence than having to go back to your executive and saying, I'm sorry, we're just not going to be able to hit this timeline that you're asking for. So the horror stories are common, and the fear is real on a regular basis. I can tell you, as being responsible for content, a major medical device company, your worst emails are the ones that call out, we found a problem, because at the least you're going to spend some time, trying to peel back the onion on how did this happen in the first place, to at worst the recall, and you're going to be inside of a CAPA that could land you in front of a regulator who you're going to be answering all sorts of very uncomfortable questions.
What is a CAPA, Jeff?
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely. This is a corrective action or preventative action. And so this is a root cause tool that's used in our industry to not only find the root cause, but make sure that it never happens again.
Yeah. As someone who is not quite as familiar with life sciences, it is assuring to hear that there's standards in place to help both prevent problems, but then also there's the reality of, hey, you're going to have some errors that enter the system. Our standards are going to help us be able to go back and identify how they were, basically course correct. Let's make sure that doesn't happen again. And it sounds like what you're describing.
Absolutely. It's really a culture that has to be embedded into the company, but especially the organization that's responsible for the content, that says that, we have processes that we rinse and repeat every day. We don't deviate from those. And when we have issues, we're able to pinpoint how did this happen so we can make the adjustments and be in a continuously improving organization, not staying static, so that it can stay ahead of the issues. Hopefully, you create the systems downstream that can catch these problems so they don't get outside of the doors of your company. A problem found internally is a score, actually. It's a win. Being able to find those problems downstream, even up until the point of just before shipping, if there's some way to be able to use your systems and processes to be screening at that level too, and you can catch it, it's going to keep the problem inside your walls, but it's also going to be a win because you're going to have found out, whoops, we had this problem. We didn't know it existed, and now we're able to really stay in front of this on an ongoing basis and keep getting better.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I understand from the regulatory perspective is that content is part of the device, right? So
that's right.
You have, if you have a defective part in the device, you have a process to replace, repair. You have training documentation on how to maintain the device, etc. But the documentation is an integral part of the medical device. So I might be exaggerating, but I was told that sometimes if you figure out that there is a comma that is wrong in a document, you have to go through a very detailed correction process that goes back to the regulatory agency, that you have to explain why you're changing that comma and things like that. Is it that detailed?
It can be very well, yes, absolutely. That's not an exaggeration. Of course, first you have to perform a risk analysis to understand, hey, did this problem really create an issue for the patient or the doctor in the use or the healthcare professional? And you roll that back, and you have to then, after that risk analysis, potentially, you're going to have to notify the regulatory agency that has this on record. You may have to go through a set of hands through engineering and marketing and regulatory internally. And it can only stand to potentially delay business, but most importantly, you're probably keeping a life-saving and or life-sustaining device from being able to get out to the field. And so humans, again, being on the other side of this, you got to get it right.
And Michael, one of the interesting things about this is that for the translation company, for the LSP, there is always this interest. Oh, I'm going to be a life sciences translation company because you can charge a lot more for life sciences than you charge for
right.
Regular translations. But there is this risk reward element that's part of that.
Right. And some of these standards take some pretty significant investment on the company, on the LSP side. Can you talk about some of the standards that are translation specific?
Yeah, absolutely. To the point of having a lot of profit potential to go after life science companies, they are demanding as well. Mm-hmm. Because if there's problems, as described earlier, you're going to be a part of the root cause analysis. And if you don't have a strong quality system inside of your company as an LSP, you're set to be asked a lot of questions that you're not used to. And oftentimes, life sciences will not even onboard a LSP that doesn't have a strong quality system, a person who is in charge of quality that sits at the executive level so that there's enough authority for oversight of quality. So yeah, you have to have that capability internally that really matches the capability of the life science company that you serve so that you can meet them and be proactive with them. And so there's standards inside of these companies that will require for external testing, and it's going to require that you have a retained group of translators that have a certain level of medical expertise that need to be demonstrated. They'll oftentimes try to make agreements that lock up those translators in your agreements so that they're not being moved around a lot. Because what will happen is not only does the company want a common language about the content that they're having translated or a common voice about what they're talking about with the product, but they're also wanting a certain level of understanding about the use and effects of the product. And that use and effects is what someone has to understand when they're trying to really realize, okay, in the source